Hi, I'm Zinnia. I'm your Gemini friend. I'm on the second house. I'm doing a planets through the houses, and this is every planet in the second house. So, wherever you have whatever in the second house, I'll get to it. I'm going to go in order, starting with the sun. But first of all, let's talk about the second house. The second house is our values and our material assets. It's like our stuff, our what we believe in, as far as what makes us who we are. It's like core comfort beliefs and values, if that makes sense. It is what you have. It can be your physical body itself. It is like what you possess, what you have on a tangible level, what you are able to bring in, and the way that you go about that, your thoughts, ideas, beliefs when it comes to what you can have, what you can manifest and attract into your life, like financially, materially, your home, your stuff, your assets. Even if the assets are you and like what you have going about your own personal values. If that makes sense, it's like all the things that make us feel comfortable in who we are and what we have on this earth in our lives. It's like, it's pretty deep stuff, but it is deep in the way that it is so human, okay? It's like our human, what we have to show. That covers it. So we're gonna go with the sun. When the sun is in the second house, there is a strong tendency to tie your like own identity, value, and what you're proud of with your stuff, what you have to show, your income maybe, or it's kind of a materialistic way of identifying. And I'm saying that straight up as somebody who has sun in the second house, okay? It's pretty materialistic, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's not like this is all I have. It's just that it's very important to you and your identity and your comfortability in your own ego to have something to show for it, no matter what that might be based on the values like throughout your chart. It doesn't just have to be material stuff. It's not like I need stuff or I won't feel good about myself, but it can be, okay? It's also like great taste, okay? That's a natural, very quality, like I have good taste in quality of things, if that makes sense. Like as far as durability, make, that sort of thing, like how it feels, how it is going to last. That's like an oddly strong focus for people with sun in the second. There's a tendency towards like attachment to things because of that identification with them on such a personal level. But fortunately, this is like a natural belief that these things are things that you have or are things that will come to you. So there actually is a lot of faith and confidence naturally in one's own ability to make money and, income, assets, all of the things that people would want to have on a material level. There is just a deeper natural inclination towards like believing in yourself, you as like the provider or one that goes out and gets the things. It's like a belief in your own ability to make money. So that really goes over positives and challenges because it's kind of like a fine line between over identifying and identifying on a healthy level, okay, with your stuff. But there's definitely the issue of possessiveness. Like, no, that's mine, don't touch it. A difficulty with sharing, especially early on. That's probably a lesson to learn, is how to share. And how to not identify so hard with your stuff. Like, I'm speaking to myself right now. sharing has been one of the hardest things for me. Like, I've only fairly recently come to realize that not everything that is mine needs to be mine, you know, like mine, whatever. Moving on to the next planet, which is the moon. Planet, you know, it's our moon. So when the moon is in the second house, that is your emotional stability tied to your physical material possessions or like security, material security. So having a very deep connection between emotional security and stuff can be difficulty, like, or it's not like a necessarily bad placement to have. And it's, I mean, I think of like intuitive ways of getting wealth, okay? This is maternal nurturing or otherwise like emotionally supportive ways of getting money. This is like, I mean, I think of counseling or like somebody who is very good at helping people with their feelings and inner worlds, or someone who is supported, but there might actually be a tendency towards like dependence making you uncomfortable, like deeply emotional unsettling feelings when it comes to not being the one to provide, if that makes sense. But the thing that I think about the very most with this is just being very sentimental about your stuff, like hanging on to things for sentimental value, having a hard time getting rid of things, and possibly the challenge of like moody spending, you know, like spending to make yourself feel better. The word for that is slipping my mind, but when emotions are tied to the material comfort, that can either have someone who is very driven to have that, like so driven to have a stable, secure, like home base or just assets that they naturally work in that way, like that's the priority. So they end up not having to worry about it as much because that has been such a focus. Or it could go the other way where it's like that's such a focus so it's stressful, you know? But either way, that's what it is like a very, just the connection between the two is what I'm saying. But there is also like the idea of when you can provide for others, it's the most fulfilling thing. So this is very much a provider type placement. And by provider, I don't mean just like monetarily, I mean like life is making food for people, like that being a sort of thing. Life is nourishing other people, life is providing for people emotionally, that there's like a very deep sense of emotionally supporting people and just your values, like that's they're tied. Yeah, it's a nice placement. I think it might take like some challenges to make sure that it is a healthy expression, but expressed healthily, this is lovely. It's a very wonderfully supportive placement to have. Next planet, Mercury. Mercury in the second is like, I mean, that can be financial smarts. Like you are good at managing wealth for yourself or for others. It could be financial anxiety. Mercury is cerebral. Mercury is like information driven and wants things organized. So there is some sort of deep connection between communication, organization, or otherwise intellectualization of the finances, material comforts, or assets. It's pretty straightforward. That's like a smart, financially minded person. This can be someone who likes to discuss money, who is comfortable discussing money, who is very logical when it comes to things that might even be more like base comfort driven. Does that make sense? Like, say someone who, a conversation between someone with Mercury in the second and someone who is more, let's say Moon in the second, like I just went over, there might be a disconnect there because one is going about it so like instinctively while the other is going about it so logically. They're very different ways of going about procuring wealth. Challenges, like I've said, are anxiety or overthinking or over logical thinking in this way, but it really boils down to like being smart with being automatically wired towards thinking in a more asset investment type way. So it's like a really good placement for people who are interested in money in a more like professional or helpful or communicative way. So yeah. Venus in the second is quite nice because the second house is already, it's ruled by Taurus. Venus, it's connected to that energy. So really the only bad thing is like the potential of overspending or over luxuriating, over identifying with the luxury things. But like otherwise, good taste, good quality, good things coming to you, an attraction to beautiful quality things. There is an attraction to like things that are aesthetically pleasing, places that are aesthetically pleasing, things that are just nice to touch, to smell, that's senses. It's like a very sensory experience of one's assets. Material is very important if you have Venus in the second house, what you have and your experience of those things. I'm not saying that it's like inherently overindulgent or inherently, what is the word? Like luxury minded to a fault. What is that? Over, it's not necessarily that. It could very easily be like significant, like good taste is significant when it comes to how you are making money, how you are supporting yourself. Venus type like occupations, beauty, the beauty industry, making things that appeal to people's sense of beauty, harmony, socializing, just all of the pleasant things in life. It really makes somebody like financially attractive, if that's something that you can say. That could potentially be a downside. Like people see you for your money and they're like, ooh, I like that. But are they seeing you? That's definitely a potential issue with it. But it is a pretty natural, it's the natural spot for Venus along with like few other houses. It's just, it has its challenges, but it's not a good, but it's not a bad place for it to be. It's quite good. Mars in the second house. So there could be a very strong ambition when it comes to, making money, to what you're doing financially, to what you're trying to get, what you're trying to make of yourself and of your situation, like a really strong drive in that area. There could also be, you could make money like related to sports or physical activity or like, I guess, physical labor or competition. This is like athlete. It's like potential aggression when it comes to like if you were financially threatened with Mars in the second, that would be a very Mars way about going about handling that. It's like the planet of war, you know? So there's definitely fighting for your own, what you have and what you make. So there's also like the potential where Mars disrupts things in a way that can be, it can be very much of an upset, violence even. So the material stability being affected in harsh ways kind of suddenly is a potential, just a potential expression of this. There's also a strong need to assert oneself, assert one's values. Like, someone with Mars in the second, if their core values are threatened, they will fight, okay? That's, yeah. There could be a tendency towards, it's really just a combination of action-driven Mars tendencies and your material, like, and then there's the tendency to, like, to have, really, for money to be like a boost. Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. Money is a good motivator, a good, like, physical motivator. This is self-driven people who are very much driven to do what they want to do based on their own values. Like, just, it's very, yeah, self-driven. That's Mars in the second. Jupiter. Jupiter in the second house. I mean, that's fortune and expansion in your material assets. That sounds pretty good. There is, like, I mean, Jupiter gives you opportunities. When you have Jupiter in the second house, it's like opportunities to see things in a more expansive way, to see things from a different perspective. I think of, like, travel related wealth, and kind of just a natural optimism when it comes to making money. It's like you might take bigger risks for a bigger reward. That willingness, just because of, like, that Jupiter optimism, believing in yourself, believing that you can. So it's, yeah, high risk, high reward is a good way to describe this placement. But many opportunities can come up from traveling or from people, like, if you have Jupiter in the second, make sure that your social circle is very much encompassing all sorts of cultures and philosophies and different people who live different ways, because that's how you're going to get your financial opportunities. This is like, the more outside of your immediate comfort zone that you go, the better you're going to get financially. Downsides, I guess, could be overspending, over optimism when it comes to risk taking, maybe gambling, and also, see, this is actually a really good placement for someone who was to teach, like, financial things to people. Wherever Jupiter is a spot where you tend to, like, collect knowledge in that particular subject and are able to use it in a way that you can help others see the bigger picture. So, financial advisor, and really this, I mean, that optimism and that willingness to go in different directions and take risks. I think of making a lot of money, spending a lot of money, remaking it because you know you can, spending it, like, not necessarily chaotic, because it totally depends on all of the other stuff in your chart and, like, what sort of person you are with money and wealth accumulation. But Jupiter in the second, you're able to take more risks just because of your mindset and connections, really. But there is also a tendency to tie, like, philosophy and even moral, like, beliefs to your finances. So there is also the possible challenge of others seeing you as, like, being to like trying to tell them stuff. Like, here's this financial advice that I learned. I want to make sure everyone knows. And you know, people might not want to hear it, but it's a good spot for Jupiter, okay? That like natural philanthropic spirit that could really show like charity to other countries, just stuff like that. That's what I think of with Jupiter in the second. Saturn in the second is probably the least materialistic so far, because people with Saturn in the second tend to start out with not much. Not necessarily. It still depends on your chart and your situation. But the challenge for someone with Saturn in the second is essentially to learn to make their own wealth, and they do start off feeling restricted in this area. So there's definitely a tendency towards like being frugal, being cautious, very risk averse. But it's one of those better with age sort of placements, because this is the sort of person who started out rough, but by the time they've gotten it together, and they will get it together, okay, because Saturn gives you discipline in an area that is essentially, however you started, it's going to be better than you would have ended up if you didn't have to have this struggle with it. So Saturn in the second really gives you wealth later on in life. And wealth, strong, stable assets, like it's accumulated slowly. But the reason is because there's probably some sort of lesson there to learn to either trust, to maybe even in this lifetime you need to learn like risk taking. It all depends on all sorts of things that could be going throughout your chart, but that risk averse, financially cautious mentality is something that is meant to be challenged, because only through going through all of the challenges and learning what you need to can you reach that massively high level that you are meant to. Like, someone with Saturn in the second, they know the value of hard work better than anyone, because they have had to work hard, okay? This is the planet of slow and steady. This is, it's delayed gratification, but for a purpose. Have faith that wherever you have Saturn, that area is meant to grow slowly and steadily. And it's meant to be very strong and stable in the way that you can teach people about it. You can be an authority in that area. But it's tough at first. Saturn placements are tough early on until you've really focused on putting that effort into that area. It's something that you really need to stick to, because it will be highly rewarding. Next planet, Uranus. Uranus in the second, I mean, if we're thinking of it from a value standpoint, this person's values are very likely unconventional. Material, asset standpoint, the things that this person wants might actually be outside of the norm, okay? This is somebody who has a lot of ups and downs when it comes to what they have, what they've accumulated. There could be like massive turbulence and just shocks, I guess, when it comes to the ways that they get and lose money. And I don't mean to have this be like a make you nervous thing, because all sorts of things can be going on in your chart, and this is something that the energy is going to make you more comfortable with it anyway. It kind of represents an unconventional, very innovative way of acquiring wealth. Because what I think of is like inventions, being ahead of your time, especially like on a money front. It's like ideas that are gonna hit people weird at first, but a few years later, everybody's doing it because it was a great idea. Okay, it's being ahead of your time. It's being more thoughtful and innovative than anyone without that placement would be. Like, when I say high risk, high reward, that's a Uranus in the second thing. And there's also definitely a strong lean towards more group-oriented humanitarian ventures, business-wise, like group charities or organizations for getting something big done. This is somebody who feels called to like live a life of people oriented work. And in this case, this person would definitely want to be like financially independent. This is a strong need to not have to rely on like conventional banks and financial institutions. It's an interesting placement. I'm curious, like if you have this, tell me what it's like. I'm curious about your thoughts when it comes to like, I think of like unconventional jobs. I think of a lot of just very innovative, inventive energy. Technology, yeah, technology, communication, very like even social networks, like coming up with things like that, making your money that way. Yeah. And then Neptune in the second is an interesting one because Neptune is very charitable. It's very service oriented and connected to like other people and their sense of emotional security. It's like sensitive in the way that includes other people. It's like an inclusive, charitable sensitivity. So having this energy in the second house, I really think of like charities and service, volunteer work. But there's also the hazy, nebulous Neptune confusion that might make it like confusing. Like I don't know where my next money is going to come from. Or artistic pursuits, definitely. This is a very like art for making money, art for security, art as a value itself, or the idea of like people above all else when it comes to how do I explain that? It's like very highly valuing others over the way that you're getting your material security. Like, that might not make sense. There's a definite potential to like be manipulated in money matters. Unfortunately, that's a possibility, or that is a way that people might tend to target you, whether or not you actually like fall for it or are deceived. There's might be a tendency towards like scammers, or a tendency towards scamming. That's unlikely, but no. I won't say that. But there's definitely like a impressionable when it comes to values in general. I'm not saying that this is somebody who would switch up their internal core values, but their values themselves might actually be kind of fueled by other people's values, if that makes sense. So it's like the idea of somebody's making money this way, and you think that's a really good idea. And then you see somebody else making an entirely other way, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea too. So just like kind of like a potential to be confused when it comes to that sort of thing. But really Neptune is just, it's like a deep connection to undercurrents and what is going on around you, and an ability to pick up on those things. So what it comes from is ultimately a desire to have like emotional or sensory harmony. Like in all situations dealing with second house things, there's a deep need to either be of service or to express something deeper, something more ethereal and potentially difficult to even explain. I don't know how well I'm explaining this one, to be honest. There's also the idea of like escapism, using money towards escapism. That's a potential for this placement. It's not the easiest. It's not the easiest place to have Neptune. There could even be like a sacrificial element to your money and investments, but there's a very high likelihood of like charitability and very good big causes with this. Last planet, Pluto. Pluto in the second is like, that's another like real hard but also real good potentially, because the intensity of Pluto can make somebody, I mean, as far as drive to make money goes, like Pluto in the second, there's what could be stronger, like an intense need to provide that security for yourself, to make sure that your assets are yours, and not so much in a possessive way as it is in a more, what's the word, like, it's security oriented. Pluto is very into privacy and security. So where you keep your money is probably like a significant thing. And then there's the transformative aspect of Pluto, where things are often built up and then torn down because the way it was built up wasn't working, and we need to do something entirely different and so much better this time. So there's like maybe frequent like the tower falling so that it can be built up better. There is also a likelihood that people will trust you with their money. So there's the idea of being somebody that people come to for like investments or for other money related opportunities. Because trust is a very, very significant thing when it comes to Pluto in the second house. People that they don't trust would never see a cent of whatever they have. Like, yeah, there's a possibility of like fear or suspicion on a high level, like unnecessary suspicion. But for the most part, if you have Pluto in the second, you probably have a reason to be suspicious when it comes to materials. But there's also like the whole concept of other people's money when it comes to Pluto. So it's likely that, yeah, like I said, like people trusting you with their money, or gaining money through inheritance, which can be like the dark Pluto thing of like death, money earned through death, or money earned through, what other way do you inherit money? Other ways. I'm sure there are other ways. Just being given money like suddenly. It's interesting that it's a, like wherever Pluto is, you pretty much have like intense ups and downs throughout your life, for the purpose of lessons, learning, you know, your specific lesson. It could be learning trust, it could be learning not to trust. It depends on you, but there's a tendency towards like that transformation leading to a change in values or something very significant, on a like deep soul level. And this is also like just a really deep intense connection to material assets. I have said material assets so many times throughout this. But yeah, that's gonna be all of the planets in the second house and my little thing on each of them. I don't think I have anything else to say. So thank you for listening. I hope that this made some sense. And if anything that I've said, you are totally like, no, I'm not like that, and I have this here. I want to know, do you have any other planets there? Is that planet like highly aspected in a positive or negative way? I'm just curious because I am here to learn, to collect information, and use it for, further knowledge. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I love you.